Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Gentlemanly Things today. I am excited to bring you a discussion about the difference of often misunderstood terms within our industry and give you a little bit more background into what they are. Today, we're going to start to understand exactly what a trunk show is and where that term came from, and talk a little bit about what we just did with our trunk show, or what we call our fall wardrobe event here in Philadelphia. As well, dive into other misunderstood terms, the difference between off the rack, made to measure, and bespoke. Obviously, off the rack is commonly understood, but I feel like made to measure and bespoke are often misunderstood and misinterchanged within our industry. So I want to clarify that for you today. But before we jump into that, we're also going to recap what I learned with Juan Bendana for a minute at last week's wonderful Philadelphia EO event. Without further ado, let's jump into it. So I'm your host, Brian Lipstein. This is The Gentlemanly Things. It's not a show about how to be a gentleman, but it's about the art of living like one. And let's jump into today's conversation. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our next episode of The Gentlemanly Things. I want to welcome you back. We took a week off last week, and I want to tell you what we've had going on and how it all connects to today's episode. Let's just jump right in. So over the past week, we've had our fall wardrobe event happening at Henry Davidsen. Once a season, we do a big event in the showroom. We have vendors come in from out of state. They come and visit. They bring samples we don't normally have. They often partner with us to offer some incentive that we're able to pass through to our clients and really bring a tremendous amount of value to the opportunities to update your wardrobe for the season. So we had that going on all of last week. On top of that, Entrepreneurs Organization of Philadelphia had our quarterly learning event with Juan Bendana. And Juan came and talked to us about leading through change. I'm not going to cover too much of his topic because after his presentation, I got a chance to catch up with him, ask him some questions. And one of the questions I asked was, would you come on and be a guest on the podcast? So he agreed to that. We are working out a time that we can get Juan here, and his message was just so powerful, so strong, got me so fired up to go into the weekend with our vendors, and it made it a huge success for us all around. One of the things Juan did say, though, is to get change started, you have to be excited about something. So today, I want to start the segment with what I'm excited about. And if you guys have something that's exciting you, please leave it in the comments below. I want to hear what you guys are looking forward to today, next week, a couple weeks from now, in the coming months. But between now and the end of the year, what has you excited to close out 2025? Share it with me. Let's share it with everybody else. Put it out into the world. Let's make it happen. And on that note, before I go into what I'm excited about, this jacket I chose to wear today because the name label in this one, let me get it here so you can see it, says onward and upward. And I made this jacket now almost 10 years ago, but I think that that is a saying that, again, when I put this jacket on and I look at that name label and I wear it all day subconsciously around my body, thinking, keep going forward, keep going up, keep compounding all the good things that you're doing, and good results are going to come out of it. So onward and upward for us. We just completed, like I said, our fall wardrobe event. More commonly in the industry, that is known as a trunk show. We're going to get into that in a little bit. But first, let me tell you what I'm excited about. I'm excited for our next podcast. We're going to have a guest back on the podcast. We're going to be interviewing one of the premier wine growers, grape growers in Napa Valley out of the Oakville region. We're going to have Bruce Phillips on the podcast. We're going to record that with him later this week. And later in the month, I'm actually going to be making a trip out to Napa to visit some friends on the West Coast and visit our friends in the Napa Valley that are in the wine industry. And we're going to spend a lovely weekend there. It happens to be over my wife's birthday, but she says we're not going for her birthday. So she can say that. I'm going to say otherwise. I always like to celebrate her birthday by going somewhere and having an experience together. So I'm happy that we'll be headed out to Napa. I'm excited to close out this current week with the fall wardrobe event offerings that we still have going. And I'm just really pumped to kind of close out our quarter strong, have our quarterly team meeting coming up next week. We have a new member of the team joining our leadership team meeting for the first time, and our team is really gelling together. So all of this has me really excited. Again, let me know what's exciting you guys, and let's jump into today's conversation. So I mentioned we call it our fall wardrobe event. Most stores in our industry call it a trunk show. And the reason we really kind of renamed it to a wardrobe event is most people said, what is a trunk show? Years of calling it a trunk show, people are saying, well, what is a trunk show? What does that mean? It doesn't coordinate to me. And so we kind of rebranded it and we said, let's call it a wardrobe event. That maybe makes more sense to the general public, the clients that we're working with, that they understand it's an event surrounding the opportunity to build their wardrobe for the season. But if you look back historically, the reason they were called trunk shows, typically a showroom or a tailor would have somebody come in that they don't normally have, or maybe it's a brand that they showcase, but they don't carry the full line. And they would do a special event for a weekend with a representative from the brand or the mill, and the representative would bring product to showcase that the store doesn't typically have. And it's an opportunity for the clients of that store to go ahead and see something different than what they would see if they came in on any other given day, and go ahead and maybe take advantage of some specials. Traditionally, vendors would travel around in trunks. If you think back to the days of travel, going all the way back before airfare on ships, when people would travel on ships, you would have a trunk. And perhaps maybe the most famous of all trunks was Louis Vuitton. And they still are very famous. We walked by the Louis Vuitton store in New York over the city, or in New York over the summer, and they've wrapped an entire building to look like their trunks. That's how famous they are. So, check out the picture here from New York City when we were up there for the Designers Forum over the summer. They would travel in trunks, and trunks were the way that people would pack. And so if you were going to pack goods that you didn't otherwise have in the store, you would travel with them in your trunk, and it became known as a trunk show. So as travel evolved, maybe that travel trunk started to translate into a car trunk, because you would drive from store to store and be selling out of the trunk of your car. The evolution of a trunk show, they happen all over the industry. A lot of stores will do multiples across the season with different vendors that they have. For us, we pick typically one vendor, one of our fabric mills, to showcase one in the fall, which happens to be Savile, which we just worked with. We will do one in the spring. We tend to work with Dorme in the spring. And so today I wear a Savile jacket, or a jacket made with Savile cloth. Of course, it's a Henry Davidsen crafted jacket, but the cloth is Savile. It's held up beautifully. It feels just as it did 10 years ago when I made the coat. And again, onward and upward continues to be a theme that applies no matter where we are. That's the direction we want to continue in. So excited to kind of explain that to you. As I was thinking about giving you that update and talking about terms that are often misunderstood, it led me into thinking about helping you understand the difference between true custom and made to measure. And so what I want to decode for you today is the differences between those two. And you might say, well, aren't they the same? What's really the difference? You may have had a made to measure suit made for you, and the person you worked with or the shop you worked with may have called it custom. It's really a confusing element to the uneducated consumer, because the experience to the consumer, for the most part, is pretty similar. Both start from picking a swatch of cloth. Both typically have your measurements taken. Both get produced from scratch and take time to be made, yet they are not the same thing. And unfortunately, in the industry, they are often misrepresented or mistakenly interchanged. Let's decode that for you today, and let's get into understanding what those terms actually mean. And I think on the other side of this, you'll feel maybe a little bit more aware of what the options are that you might be exploring in your own market. And of course, if you work with us at Henry Davidsen, this is part of our proven process. We have a 3-step proven process: consult, educate, design. We would be covering this in part of the education step in our consultation. When you work with us, we have hands-on visuals. You come in, we really get into the nuts and bolts of it. But understanding for you, I'm going to do my best to kind of explain it today. We'll pop some visuals on the screen if you're watching the video stream of this podcast. But understanding the difference is really important, because there's a tradition in the industry, the tailoring industry, of what custom or bespoke really means. We certainly want to preserve what that tradition is. And that's one of our tenets, is to bring that to the forefront and, again, bring that quality and intention to the gentleman who's going to appreciate it. So let's get into it. When we talk about fit of a garment, there's really 3 classifications of fit that we can get into. Now, what the majority of the world shops is what would be called off the rack, off the peg. And when you're talking about shopping off the rack, you are picking a stock size, something that is made for most people to be fit most of the time, but it never fits anybody all of the time. And so another saying that has been tossed around, I can't take credit for coming up with it, but one of my good friends in the industry, Arnie Roberti, said this, and I don't know if he came up with it or somebody else did, but it's a garment that's made for everybody, but it's made for nobody. And I think when you kind of slow that down and back out those 2 sayings, right, it fits most people most of the time, and it's made for everybody, but it's made for nobody. You put those together and you really start to see that when you buy something predetermined off the rack, you really have to sacrifice in quite a few different ways. But in terms of when we talk about fit, the off-the-rack size is determined solely by your chest measurements. We take a circumference around your chest, and whatever that number is going to correlate to the jacket size, at least in American sizing. So if your chest is 42 inches, that would equate to a 42 jacket. Based on your height, you may be able to have an adjustment to that in 42 short, 42 regular, 42 long, maybe 42 extra long if you can find it. And if you're a guy that has a belly, a little bit more of a forward fullness in your stomach, you would be 42 portly. Those are the only adjustments to a stock size off the rack pattern that you're going to find when it comes to buying something from any sort of brand, fashion brand, retail store, things like that. The first step in really getting into starting to customize something would be the step into made to measure. And you're starting to see made to measure come around more and more and more. If you go back to when I started Henry Davidsen around 2006, and at least around Philadelphia, if you were to go out, nobody was doing made to measure. You couldn't buy anything online that was made for you in that sense. Really, I've watched the whole evolution of this made to measure come to market over the course of the last 20 or so years as we've built Henry Davidsen. What made to measure is doing is it's starting to customize elements of the garment for you, the consumer, but it's not necessarily maintaining the tradition of what custom would have been. So the way it works is it comes down to the pattern of the garment. And when I talk about the pattern, I'm not talking about a plaid, a window pane, or pinstripes. That would be pattern of a fabric. When we talk about pattern for a suit, the pattern is all of the paper panels that would get laid out across the cloth. Typically, you see this on a tailor's table that would be very long and laying out about 3.5 to 4.5 yards of cloth all at once. And you would lay out these paper pieces that create all the panels of the garment that then get traced with chalk, cut by hand with scissors, and then get sewn together. So when you create the pattern, and it's made to measure. What made to measure actually does is made to measure takes that already created stock size pattern, and it goes ahead and it applies the measurements from your body onto the existing pattern to augment it. So all the changes are made before any fabric is cut, and all of the limitations of cutting fabric and then trying to take it apart to make an alteration go away. But what people don't realize is when you draft a pattern, the tailoring of that pattern requires, and the way they make the stock pattern to fit most people is they make it based off of a common set of ratios. So when you measure the chest, there's a ratio for the shoulder, a ratio for the distance across the back, the waist of the garment, the sleeve lengths and the coat length would change with that short, regular, long designation I was talking about. Those ratios all exist so that when everything gets sewn together and the garment drapes with gravity, it can drape nice and cleanly. Now, if you take those out of ratio by altering that off the rack garment, so back to the stock size, if you alter it and you don't alter it correctly and you try and sew it back together, the garment may twist on you. And take that limitation now to made to measure. If you take that preset pattern and you try to adjust one measurement over another that ends up being outside of ratio, then you're going to find that when you try to sew the garment together and have it hang on the body, that it's going to twist and not hang correctly. With made to measure, you still have limitations because you have those existing ratios already in the pattern that you're working from. And so the best example I give people that I think will really help you cement this home is that made to measure is like adjusting a picture on a computer screen. So if you want to resize a picture on a computer and you try to pull it from the right or pull it from the bottom, what you find is that the picture stretches, right? You distort that ratio and you stretch the picture. But if you pull it from the corner where you're maintaining the ratio automatically with that size adjustment tool, then the picture stays the same. However, the picture, what you're trying to resize to make it fit something, may not fit perfectly into the space that you're trying to fit it. So you have to drag that corner, and then maybe you can tweak the outer or bottom edge to resize without stretching it too much that it looks out of proportion. But maybe you can't. Maybe you're stuck with just dragging it from the corner. Hopefully that helps kind of illustrate what's happening with made to measure. Made to measure, you're taking the pre-existing pattern, you're dragging it essentially from the corner for getting it closer to the client's measurements. As far as everything else, for the most part, you as the customer are going to see that this relates pretty much the same as custom. You will most likely start from a swatch of fabric that you get to pick from a book. You will most likely get to pick your buttons, your linings. You'll get to specify how you want the lapel to be, from notch or peak lapel to the width of the lapel, and then how you want the pockets and the vents and all the other details that you get to choose in designing the garment from scratch. That still exists in made to measure. So it's really coming down to, well, what do you expect the perfection of the fit to be, as well as the next thing I'm going to talk about, which is getting into the amount of handwork that goes into the garment. When we make that comparison, let's jump up to what we call custom or bespoke. So those two terms I count as interchangeable. Some people may not, but custom, bespoke, to me kind of mean the same thing. There's another term for a handmade garment that you might hear called benchmade. To me, benchmade is kind of the next level and the highest level that you'll find. And let's kind of decode what those terms might mean. So when we talk about custom or bespoke, now we're talking about the pattern that I was just describing, but rather than starting from an existing pattern, the pattern is created through a mathematical drafting process from the client's measurements. So we take the full set of measurements off of the client, we then draft the pattern, and then the process should be a little bit different because we're drafting this pattern from scratch. It's half mathematical, half artistic, and we need to make sure that we check and refine that pattern as we go. With bespoke or custom, there should be some intermediate fitting steps that happen as the garment's being created, or the way that we do it, instead of cutting your cloth the way a tailor would have in the past, we actually take a scrap cloth and we baste a canvas onto it with shoulder pads, and we use that to put onto the client's body so that we can see how did the pattern drafting come out. We mark all the changes that need to be made. We take those marks, we translate them back to the paper pattern, and then we've now refined that pattern and we can go ahead and cut and sew the client's garment from there. With that kind of process happening, the pattern should be kept on file. So that's an individual pattern that's been created for that particular client. With made to measure, they often don't save that particular pattern because they've just taken an existing pattern and made the adjustments to it. The other difference you'll see when you get to bespoke or custom is that by definition, the majority of that garment, I kind of count 90% at this point in time, 90% or more of that garment should be done by hand. And when we talk about handwork in a garment, the reason handwork is so impactful in the garment, and for those that have worn it and understand it, that it's sought after, it's not just the time and the attention and detail that got put into making it, but the effect of wearing handmade clothing is such that as you wear the garment, it creates a moldability in the garment. So the garment will break in around your body. It's going to become more and more comfortable the longer you wear it. And it really starts to form to you and form as almost a second skin, being that layer that's covering the body. So you get this added level of comfort. You get this added beauty of drape. And then areas like hanging a sleeve, when you're hanging it by hand and the tailor is going around by hand like this, as opposed to a machine, which is a top and bottom thread being pulled with tension, the stitch is actually done a little bit looser, and that gives more mobility in the garment as you move in it as well. So it's not going to necessarily not be as strong because that's really kind of dependent on the strength of the thread that's being used. Really where the seam is going to go ahead and be more flexible to the movement and be more comfortable for you, the wearer, when you have the garment on your body. So when you're wearing bespoke handmade clothing, you're going to find that, one, the fit expectation should be perfect because we've started from your measurements. There's no preset ratio that has to be maintained. And we've checked and refined those measurements, and you've gotten a chance to feel a test garment on your body and give some feedback to the tailor. And then it's finished, by hand. So it's made and finished by hand. So you have that extra mobility in the garment as it moves with your body. And so really, decoding made to measure and bespoke, because that has to be handmade. To give you an idea, to make a handmade garment, you're talking between 45 and 55 hours of work. Sometimes if that's a team working on the garment, if it's a single tailor working at a bench, getting up to that bench made garment that I'm talking about, that could be upwards of 80 hours of work that goes into the garment from the initial pattern drafting phase all the way through completion of the final buttonholes and delivery to the client. So handmade clothing truly is a wearable piece of art. And the tailors that take the pride and the time, and they have the skill and the training to create handmade clothing, really look at it as wearable art, and they really appreciate the client who also looks at it that way the most of all the clients that they work with. When you get into these distinctions, going back to also that handwork and made to measure has no specification of how the garment's made in terms of canvassing, handwork, and those construction details on the inside of the garment. So if you know anything about canvas, this could be a whole other talk another time, but a fused canvas means that there's glue on the inside of the garment. You can have made to measure garments that are glued together. If you understand what full canvas means, you can have full canvas that lacks all of the handwork. So just because there's a full canvas in the garment doesn't mean that it's handmade. And because of that, the last point I'll make is you could have a made-to-measure garment that is 100% handmade as well. If it starts from an existing pattern, it still can't be called custom, even if it has all that handwork in it. So these are the finer details and the minutia that make the difference, and why you start to see prices for these garments jump as you get into where the true craft is being maintained, as opposed to the democratization that you've seen with customization options, really in that made to measure space. So just because something is customized doesn't necessarily mean by definition it is a custom suit. And that's a tough distinction to make. And it confuses a lot of people, right down to the salespeople that are selling it and the brands that are representing it. Because if you're creating something from scratch, you think, well, I had this custom made for me. Following the tradition of the industry, custom or bespoke really truly means a pattern from scratch made by hand. And if you go back to where the term bespoke really originated from, you start to understand where this history and tradition comes from. Tying this all together with the trunk show, this is kind of interesting. So today we buy and select fabrics out of bunches of books. So we may have a bunch of fabric that's all similar quality, different colors, different patterns, maybe different weaves. There may be 45 to 80 patterns all in a bunch, and you'll sit there and flip through the book and you'll select a fabric. Well, in the old days, well, even today, those books are really expensive to make. So before even the technology existed to bind those books and cut them efficiently and put the bunches together and get them all labeled, cloth merchants used to travel with their trunks from tailor shop to tailor shop and show the collection for the season. And each tailor would make their selections and say, okay, of this particular style, give me 15 yards. Of this particular style, give me 4 yards. Of that particular style, I think it's really going to sell. I'm going to stock up on that. Give me 60 yards. And if you can picture what a true bespoke tailor shop looks like, you walk in and they have bolts of fabric on the wall or stacked up on shelves to select from. And the customer would come in, and that would be their selection. Whatever the tailor decided to carry in stock would be what they would have to pick from. And so when you made your selection of the fabric, that fabric became spoken for, hence the term bespoke. And once the fabric became spoken for, the process of creating that custom suit would begin. And it would begin with the measurements, the drafting of the pattern, and the subsequent try-ons until the garment gets cut and sewn and delivered at the end of the day. So bespoke as a term really belongs to the custom tailoring industry, and it originates from that fabric being spoken for. Now, I talked about Benchmade as that last category. Benchmade really, so when a tailor has a tabletop, that's often known as the tailor's bench. And so when we talk about Benchmade, the indication is that a tailor is sitting at the bench sewing the entire suit by hand, and it's one tailor working on the garment from start to finish. So Benchmade is a very old school way of making it. There are a few tailors that I know maybe left in the United States that still maybe work on their own garments without a team of seamstresses that might help in some of the operation. And then if you go over to Savile Row, and I've had the chance to visit Savile Row a handful of times. And when I go over there, I explain to them who I am and that I have a store in Philadelphia and I've been doing this in the industry for so long. They've invited me into the workshops in the back room, down in the basements of the buildings. You get to meet the young tailors that are sitting and learning the craft. And you see them sitting there all working on individual suits that they're constructing for their clients. So really a neat distinction, but understanding, again, what these terms mean so that you don't get duped out in the market by somebody saying, hey, yeah, we make custom suits, and make sure you have enough time. Again, 45 to 55 or so hours for a true custom suit to be made. You're not going to get it delivered to your hotel the next day. So, just kind of, you're going to need multiple fittings to do it the right way. And then maybe you can explore it. But now you can explore it a little bit more educated, and hopefully you're able to see what the difference is. If you have questions about this, I would love to engage in conversation with you. So please, by all means, leave comments, reach out to me. Let me know what you thought of this conversation. And if it's ever been a situation that applied to you where you thought you were getting custom, it actually, now that you understand it, was maybe made to measure, or vice versa, right? Sometimes people do call it made to measure, and it really should be called custom. So off the rack, made to measure, custom and bespoke, three distinctly different things, even though at the end of the day, they all finish in a very similar skin. The fine details in between are what are going to make the huge difference in the final product. The gentlemanly things are all about the intention and the time you put into something that makes it that much more elevated than its standard counterpart. Take this knowledge with you. Please share it with anybody that you think would benefit from this. I'm clearly passionate about this topic. If you can't hear the excitement in my voice today, and it all started with kicking off this episode, sharing with what I'm excited about. So with all of that, please like, follow, and subscribe on whatever channel you listen to your podcast. If you could take a moment and give us a rating in whatever platform you're following, would really appreciate and truly appreciate the help. Please leave us a comment if you did it or if you have questions. Really enjoying engaging with the audience that has been growing onward and upward with the gentlemanly things. So for today, I'm going to sign off with that and look forward to bringing you Bruce Phillips from Vine Hill Ranch in our next episode.